Welcome, everyone. Now, no other world leader has visited the White House in an official capacity over the past year more than Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. 7 times, to be exact. This time, as Donald Trump's team and Iranian officials are holding indirect talks to try to stave off a conflict. Iran has once again topped Netanyahu's agenda in D.C. as he pushes for a hardline approach that could derail talks. In Netanyahu's second trip to the Oval Office last April, he sought escalation against Tehran, while Trump disagreed and wanted to hold nuclear talks, yet ultimately the two ended up carrying out a surprise aggression against the Islamic Republic amid those talks. Yet both U.S. officials and think tanks, as well as Iranian officials, both political and military, have asserted a new round of conflict will be much more intense than what took place last June. Israel's Prime Minister's U.S. visit and how Western media has depicted his reception by the U.S. president will be the focus of our Spotlight program. First, let's watch this report.
Trump once again received Netanyahu at the White House as indirect nuclear negotiations between Washington and Tehran are ongoing. Netanyahu, who had said Iran would be a central focus of his talks in Washington, hoped to secure U.S. backing for a tougher stance and probably a confrontation with Tehran. Those expectations, however, were not realized. Following the meeting, Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform that he had told Netanyahu negotiations with Iran must continue and that he would assess whether diplomacy should proceed or if other options would be necessary. Trump's remarks aligned with the comments of Iran's security chief Ali Larijani, who after visiting Oman and Qatar said Washington and Tehran are determined to continue diplomatic engagement.
Both sides of the negotiations are willing for the talks to continue and are consulting in their respective capitals in order to bring the negotiations to a successful conclusion.
Iran's foreign ministry has also emphasized Tehran's commitment to get illegal sanctions lifted through diplomatic means, while urging the United States not to yield to Israel's disruptive influence over the talks.
The Zionist regime has repeatedly acted as a disruptor, opposing any diplomatic process in the region that could lead to peace. It is therefore up to U.S. officials to act independently of such pressures and lobbies and not let others dictate the country's foreign policy.
Netanyahu, who faces a strong backlash among Israelis for mishandling of affairs, especially the Hamas 2023 Al-Aqsa flood operation and the 12-day war with Iran, is now struggling desperately to find a way to dismantle diplomacy with Iran. During the 12-day war, Iran showed significant might in striking Israel using powerful missiles that forced the regime to abide by Trump's proposed ceasefire. Having learned from the June war and watching ongoing negotiations between Iran and the U.S., Netanyahu's regime needs to realize another bitter reality. He and his cabinet ministers had better come to terms with Iran's influential presence in the region.
And now for our guests for the program. Joining us, Mr. DeBar, activist and commentator, joining us from New York. And Mr. Omar Nashabe, political analyst and judicial affairs expert, joining us from Beirut, Lebanon. Gentlemen, hello to both of you, and pleasure to have you both on our Spotlight program. I guess, Dawn, we'll start with you out there in New York. So most Western media outlets, you very well know, have reported that Trump said that no definitive agreement was reached with Netanyahu involving Tehran, and that so-called nuclear-related talks will resume. This after 2.5 hours of a closed-door meeting. What's your initial read on this meeting that took place?
I think it's very good news, first of all. I think everyone knows that Netanyahu went there to pitch, something that would enable Israeli and or American strikes on Iran and continue the kind of warfare that's been going on really for years. And I think that, Trump is looking down the line a little further, perhaps. It's a very difficult, but I have no idea what's actually in his mind or his heart. But I do know if anyone wanted to try to establish some sort of a political rapprochement with the U.S. and Iran in the United States government, they would have resistance from almost every quarter. The entire set of members of Congress, for example, would be throwing obstacles. There would be judges across the country, as we're seeing now with other things that Trump's trying to do, that would be finding ways to reach in and interfere with the elements of things that would constitute the construction of some sort of normal relationship in terms of lifting sanctions. We saw that, as a matter of fact, in 2018 when Trump went to meet with Putin and was talking with the North Korean government, and he was looking at establishing a peace treaty with North Korea, which is still outstanding since the early 1950s. And there was a resolution passed into Congress almost unanimously. You have 100 members of the Senate and 435 members of the House of Representatives, and I think there were 521 votes to tell him you cannot remove sanctions against Russia or North Korea or, by the way, Iran without our authorization. And of course, that's pretty much the same Congress that would be there now.
Right, and let me see, do we lose Mr. Omar Nashabe? Omar, are you with us? All right, it seems like we might have lost Mr. Omar Nashabe for a moment there. I'm going to stay with you, Don. Now, Netanyahu was a key player in pushing first-term Donald Trump to abandon, you very well know, the JCPOA for a better deal that never came. He tried to get Iran's missiles into the parameters of the JCPOA. That never happened. He tried to get a new deal that involved Iran's missile program. That never happened. He tried to put a complete halt to Iran's civilian nuclear program. That never happened. And he tried to get Washington push for Iran to abandon its support for resistance for Palestinians. All failed efforts. Is he barking up the same tree? I mean, he hasn't changed one bit, but the question is, at this point, has Donald Trump?
Well, again, I don't know what goes on inside Donald Trump's mind, and I'm kind of grateful for that. It might be a little scary up there. But Netanyahu, you can read him a mile away. Look, he needs to maintain his position as prime minister, and in order to do that, Israel has to be confronted with some existential crisis at every turn and every corner. Or else he is removed as prime minister once the dust settles, and then he is prosecuted criminally and sent to prison for what's left of his miserable life. And so he's, all about. By the way, that's, in my opinion, and looking at his career, he's been trading in hate and war for his entire career. And if you go back and look at the various things that have happened, just looking at what's on the ground right now in the area. First of all, go back to 2005 when Sharon pulled out of Gaza, or 2004, 2005, early 2006, and he almost immediately has a stroke and is in a vegetative state for the rest of his life. And everyone in this political circle that's dominant in Israel now is clamoring to end up where we are. In other words, to push the Palestinians out of every corner of Palestine, particularly Gaza and the West Bank, and to do whatever plans they have for that to build their empire as they see it. The people around them that fund this are making money every which way. They're selling weapons, they're stealing land and selling and developing it, they're stealing water, they're stealing other resources. Oil is a huge one, for example. So there's no one really there, sane or not, to say stop this. And so if Trump is trying to stop it, and if he's looking for a constituency in the circles of power, either here or there, it's going to be extremely difficult to do. I think what's necessary is that people in Israel and the United States need to step up their game so that the rest of the people in Congress here or the Knesset there, also the people that are making money on weaponry here and there, need to feel our anger and basically to feel enough pressure to make them stop or understand they might be risking their positions.
All right, thanks, Bud. And Mr. Omar Nashabe, thanks for your patience. Seems like we finally have you back on. Okay, Omar, your initial take on what we think we know at this point about this latest Netanyahu visit to the White House, the 7th to be exact, over the past 13 months, 3 related to Gaza, 4 related to Iran.
Yes, yes, I'm sorry, there were some technical difficulties. I couldn't hear your guest, but now I can hear you. Yes, well, these meetings, it is very well known now that, Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Trump had more meetings together than any, Mr. Trump met with Netanyahu more than he met with any other world leader. And, well, apparently this shows this kind of strong alliance between the Trump administration and the Zionist entity. And, and this proves again and again that the United States of America is the main decision maker. And, and this proves again that the genocide that actually happened in Gaza, the United States is directly involved in overseeing all the military operations that constitute war crimes and crimes against humanity and crimes of war. And a genocide, and actually the United States put also sanctions on judges at the International Criminal Court for daring to try to hold Israel accountable. Now they're moving into a new segment. The objective is to destroy the Islamic Republic in Iran. However, it's not that simple, and it's not going to be that easy. As the threats by the Trump administration are increasing every day. The other day he said he wants to send another bomber and more navy to threaten Iran. He thinks that the Iranians are going to be terrified by these threats, and they're going to give up their ballistic missiles. They're going to give up their strategy in the region. They're going to abide by all the requests by the Trump administration and Netanyahu. Netanyahu has been, calling for the destruction of Iran for a very long time, and he wants to seize this opportunity to push more for this attack to actually happen. However, I think the American military has submitted reports to the White House saying that it's not going to be an easy military operation because the Iranians are united, and that is the most powerful element of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The second powerful element is that the Iranians have developed their technology, and they have a capacity to defend themselves, and they've proven that in the actual last round of confrontation with the Israelis. And they were able to prove to the whole world that they are able to actively defend themselves by hitting targets inside the occupied Palestine that were very well protected targets, and therefore they could actually cause severe damage to the American military. And also, there's another component, which is that I don't think that the Chinese are very comfortable with this attack on Iran. Because there are so many close ties between China and Iran. And so therefore this makes the situation more complicated, and this pushed the Americans to take a few steps back. After they had threatened and they wanted to attack the next day, we were waiting for the attack at any moment. Then all of a sudden we heard that the Americans were ready for negotiations. And, that was the first setback. The second setback is that the negotiations were supposed to actually happen in Turkey. The Iranians refused Turkey, and therefore another setback. The American approved that it wouldn't be in Turkey. The third setback was also that there would be participants from Arab countries and regional countries, and Iran also refused, and that is the third setback. And the fourth and most important setback is that the agenda of the negotiations, Iran insisted that it will only discuss the nuclear weapons and nothing else, the nuclear program, because the Iranian program is not, the nuclear program in Iran is for civilian uses, not for any military or weapon producing, and that is what the Iranian leaders have been repeating over time. And so they were ready to discuss the uranium enrichment and the peaceful program, and Iran has been negotiating this with so many European countries for over the years, which led to the agreement in 2015. However, Mr. Trump now, he doesn't want the deal. He wants to actually deal in a rougher way with Iran. And apparently he's taking a setback and approving to this negotiation. First round of negotiation wasn't that, was very promising, actually.
Very well put. Thank you there for your take. Omar, I'm going to come back to you now, Donna. Thanks for your patience. Now, this is a quote here from Donald Trump. It's actually a quote that he put on social media. He said, "There is nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated." He said, "If I can, I'll let the Prime Minister know that that will be a preference." So is this, my question to you, Don, a very telling statement that if diplomacy and a deal is actually what the U.S. Prefers, that this implies that the Israelis are preferring conflict between Washington and the Islamic Republic?
That's what they're both projecting, for us to consume, basically. What they really intend, of course, we're going to find out as time develops, and we have to assume the worst and try to make something less happen. Trump, I laid out pretty much that the scenario here. No matter what he wants to do, everyone around him will prevent him from deconstructing the hostility between the U.S. and Iran. The idea here is, with people who are actually making policy that have the control over it, is to negate Iran as a regional competitor in that area. In other words, we're clearing the road for Israel to dominate that part of the world, and or the United States with Israel as an agent. There are those here, I'm sure, would just as soon see Israel swept out of the way as well, so they could directly own and operate that part of the world along with the rest of it. But the construct that's evolved certainly since 1948 is one that has the state of Israel as a U.S. proxy, a local regional administrator, whatever. And so Iran is much larger, actually has the indigenous people living in it that have been there and know the area and the land, for millennia. Has a very strong economy of its own, regardless, and despite the sanctions, has a rather resilient economy. It is definitely, the population is, I don't know, 10 times, whatever. I don't even know how many people live in Israel that they count anymore. But substantially larger population, the largest population in the region. And so, and the GDP, much larger. And I think if you took U.S. weapons construction and finance out of the so-called state of Israel, the GDP would drop in half or more. So they need to clear the road so this beast can operate in the region, and that's what we're seeing in front of us. That this plan has a very large constituency in the circles of power here, and also I don't consider the government so much that, but in the circles of administration as well. That's what Trump's up against.
Right. And Omar, I want to put a question to you that I put to Don, because it kind of matters to the context of what we're talking about. And it is that Netanyahu has had quite a bit of success manipulating and baiting Donald Trump, especially in his first term, to get what he wants when it came to Iran. It seems the farther we look back, and I'm saying this might not be how you see it from your perspective, it just, from my perspective, it seems that he was earlier on able to capitalize on Trump's naivety and political experience. Has Donald Trump evolved at all? Is he a different animal today than when he was 7 or 8, 9 years ago?
Yes, I'm not sure if he is naive. When you mention his naivete, I think he's a businessman, and he's a very aggressive businessman, and he cares about accumulating wealth, and he had announced earlier in one of his public appearances, that he is supported by lobbyists and by financial donations. And actually he said about Mrs. Endelson and about the money, he talked about $250 million. and he wanted to. He was talking about his third term, and he said that he may run for a third term if he receives the same support. So I think this close relationship between Donald Trump and the Israelis is actually connected to his financial benefits and the accumulation of wealth. And the connection he has to the Israelis is a business connection, a very strong business connection, and he's using the other elements, such as the Zionist Christians and other components that are social components, in order to fit into this kind of an alliance. And, it was very clear when he indicated that he wants to turn Gaza into a Riviera, and he wants to build hotels, and he wants to make a very successful joint enterprise with the Israelis and some Arab Gulf countries. And when he insisted that Jared Kushner, enlarges and brings more people into the Abraham Accords, in order to achieve a larger interests in the region that are mainly economic and financial interests. So I'm not sure now when the American military, the information I have is that the military in the United States is not very much in favor of having a wide-scale war against Iran, because they think that they cannot achieve the same success or success, quote unquote, that they had achieved in other places, such as in Venezuela, where they achieved something that they consider as a big success. They kidnapped a president of a sovereign nation and brought him to the United States. But on the military level, it was considered like a perfect military operation that actually was very successful. Now, the American military and the American military intelligence, apparently, from the information I have, are not very comfortable about wide-scale military operation in Iran. It's going to be more complicated, and it's going to, maybe there will be casualties, and this will actually be very damaging to the Trump administration. And I think Trump knows about this, and no matter how much pressure Netanyahu will put on him, his interest will always come first on, he doesn't want to end this with a big defeat. And
thank you, Mr. Nashabe.
Apparently there are some serious difficulties and challenges.
And exactly that's the statement that I needed from Mr. Nashabe to steer me to my last question for you, Mr. Don DeBar. U.S. track record in the region, the adventurism, the invasions, the occupations, the looting, the scores of civilians killed across West Asia, nearly zero sustainable achievements or victories, to put it bluntly, militarily. So Trump, and all the optics involved here, when you take that into consideration, you have Trump, who is in the best situation to sell this war either to the Pentagon, to the U.S. voter, to even lawmakers in America, a war that looks on the surface that he's getting baited into by a war criminal in Tel Aviv. How does that impact how he navigates this moving forward?
Well, I mean, it is a problem, and I'd say not so much for Trump, but for the forces behind trying to make this war happen. It's a good problem. I'm glad that it exists, because such a war should not happen. It's insanity to be playing with fire like that. What's the outcome? Look around, start in the region. Look at Afghanistan. The U.S. did that starting in 1979. Look at Iraq, what's left of Iraq. Look at the success stories even. Look at Saudi Arabia. Look at Bahrain. Look at these places where, the West has had full sway. The people there are they're not living peaceful, prosperous lives in a democratic environment, that encourages them to fully express their feelings and their potential. To the contrary, that's what the United States has done historically. That's the reason when the United States goes in and they have a fair conversation about what to do, people reject it because they see what the United States has done, the track record. This is something that has to change. Now, if Trump sees this and is trying to actually accomplish that, I mean, that would be great, and it's going to be a long haul, but it'd be nice to see the United States rejoin the world's nations as an equal.
Okay.
And we need to work on that. But if Trump is trying to do that, he's going to find the strongest resistance is from inside the government and from the people behind him, like Adelson and others, who fund the entire apparatus here. So.
Gentlemen, pleasure to have you both on. Time has gotten the better of us. Thank you both sincerely for joining us here on our Spotlight program. Mr. Don DeBar joining us from New York and Omar Nashabe joining us from Beirut, Lebanon. And viewers, thanks for tuning in. This brings us to the end of our Spotlight program. Stay safe and bye-bye for now.